Poland's struggle against illegal immigration is reaching its climax. New issues are arising. Migrants are forcing their way into the country, particularly at the Polish-Belarusian frontier. While the immigration issue has been under the scrutiny of the EU, the Polish government is taking matters into its own hands to expel any illegal migrants already in the country and to prevent new ones from entering. It has been quite some time since Poland vowed to keep itself off limits to migrants and Muslims. Clearly, it aims to be a country of one religion and one race. Though shrouded in their alleged goal of wanting to protect the country's heritage, the actual aim might be a bit different from what we know, or what we think.
Let's say I want to go through this wall, I break through the wall, what happens to me next?
You will die like a dog.
While it might seem that the people of Poland and its government are pushing against immigrants for the sake of their culture, they may actually be facing two different problems: terrorism and Islamic extremism. The fight against immigration has been ongoing for a long time, even decades. Poland's borders have always had able, vigilant soldiers who nearly shot anyone attempting to cross, or any Muslim who came too close to the other side of the fence. Now, while you might view this as Poland being extremely strict, intolerant, or unaccommodating, your perspective might change when you consider the number of terrorist attacks Poland has experienced throughout its history because of this tight policy. None. Compared to seemingly more secure countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, or Russia, Poland has had almost no terrorist attacks since its establishment as a nation. We might attribute this to how secure Poland is. It has one of the lowest crime rates in all of Europe, and for crimes by terrorist groups, it's nearly zero. With the recent surge in the number of migrants attempting to enter the country, border security has been increased. This is the country's attempt to prevent sinister individuals from entering and causing chaos.
How many refugees has Poland taken?
0.
Polish politician and EU Parliament member Dominik Tarczyński has constantly stood against illegal immigration and Islamic extremism, putting as his first point the county's security and welfare.
Illegal immigrant is not welcome in Poland. This is what we promised, and these words will be kept.
Dominik, while defending his stance and that of the country on their extreme measures to prevent illegal immigration, argues that it isn't a religious clash and that it is not a fight against Muslims. While this might be true, it's important to note that the nation's anti-immigrant measures are indeed much more extreme for migrants coming from Islamic countries. Additionally, Dominik often points out that the immigration crisis is not just a problem for Poland, but for the whole of Europe.
And this is against our safety in Europe. This is very huge issue.
Aside from being relatively free of terrorist attacks, the religious stance of Poland might also conflict with Islam as a religion. Quite frankly, there are only a few Muslims in the country. Dominik, speaking to the media, expressed his views on the immigration issue in a more religious context. Despite stating that the crisis wasn't specifically against Muslims, he pointed out that the majority of these migrants are, in fact, Muslims. When asked about the nation's encounter with Muslims, here's what Dominik said.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
How many Muslims are in
Not
Poland?
at all. We've got Tatars.
The question remains, why is Poland stricter in handling immigrants from Islamic countries than those from non-Islamic countries? Why does it claim to be friendly with Muslims but act in an anti-Islamic manner at its borders? Looking at countries like the UK and the US, the rise in crimes and terrorist attacks involving Muslims, such as the 9/11s and 7/7 bombings, may explain why Poland is wary of migrants from Islamic nations. These events, still fresh in global memory, have led to heightened fears of extremism, which may influence Poland's stance on Muslim immigration. However, while security concerns are valid, it's important to differentiate between extremists and peaceful Muslims. Poland's stricter measures raise the question, is this about security, or is it rooted in discrimination? Some argue Poland's policies reflect broader anti-Muslim sentiment tied to nationalist and anti-immigrant movements across Europe, rather than just security concerns. Ultimately, the issue remains whether Poland's approach is truly protecting the country or unfairly stereotyping an entire religious group.
Which is crazy. So this quota system, which was offered by Germany, failed, as we know. And this is against our safety in Europe. This is very huge issue. First of all, I'm talking about the terrorist attacks committed by radical Islamists.
Despite the fact that not all Muslims are actually bad, and also that some of these Muslims are only trying to seek refuge while danger looms behind them, Dominik retains his stand on illegal immigration, stating that migrants, especially Muslim migrants, have no place in Polish soil. But you make matters worse, the migrants themselves are now attempting to force their way into Poland. No need for hiding anymore. The situation at the Polish border has become much more violent than it was in recent years, with the migrants now destroying the border fence and even fighting the soldiers on the opposite side of the fence.
We've been starving and dying. The last day we crossed the Polish border.
How did you cross?
We jumped. We had a ladder, wooden ladder, and then we put it, and then we jumped.
The migrants are risking it all for their lives, yet the security at the borders only tightens further, pushing the migrants back out. Considering that most of these migrants are only seeking refuge from the dangers that drove them out, do you feel it is right that the Polish government still strongly stands by its anti-migrant policy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. One of the recent events that caused the sudden rise in the migrant population crossing the Polish-Belarusian border was the political unrest in neighboring Belarus. Let's briefly go into the details, shall we? In Belarus, the fraudulent election of President Alexander Lukashenko in 2020 led to mass protests, which the government brutally suppressed. Activists, opposition leaders, and ordinary citizens faced detention, torture, and severe penalties for dissenting. The situation deteriorated further, particularly during the February 2024 parliamentary elections, which lacked transparency and excluded international observers. It was one of the most corrupt elections of the century. The entire political system remains tightly controlled, with opposition parties barred from participating, crushing any hope of real democracy within the country. The situation worsened to the point that human rights defenders and organizations like Viasna were targeted, with members imprisoned on politically motivated charges. Notable figures, such as Nobel laureate Ales Bialiatski, are currently enduring long prison sentences for speaking the truth. It doesn't end there. Activists have faced harsh treatment, including torture, incommunicado detention, and denial of medical care. Many political prisoners, including journalists and lawyers, have been detained after being accused of extremist activities simply for advocating for human rights. Now, we see why Poland comes into question. The climate of repression in Belarus has pushed many Belarusians to seek refuge abroad, particularly in Poland. But how extreme has Polish security gone in preventing immigrants from entering? Polish border guards, rather than using guns and bullets, have resorted to pouring dirty water on the migrants at the border fence, just to drive them away. While this method has proven effective in deterring them, it has also drawn international concern, with several human rights groups questioning the Polish government's border management and treatment of migrants. In response, the Polish government has publicly stated that the nation will continue to prevent all illegal immigration attempts, emphasizing that it is trying to avoid the same issues faced by less strict countries that once welcomed illegal migrants and are now struggling to remove them. Indeed, the Polish government is focusing on prevention rather than cure. Despite the criticism of how the Polish government is handling the situation, other countries, such as Hungary, Latvia, and Finland, have supported its stance. Finland has adopted similar measures at its Russian border, and Latvia has done the same at its Belarusian border. Poland has also added wire fences along its borders, doubling up its security. Still, will this be enough to deter migrants fleeing for their lives? In addition to this, the government has mobilized police officers to the borders and increased surveillance, creating a much larger barrier for migrants.
Attention, attention. The police inform. If you can't follow the orders, force will be used.
The government, in addressing the public, assured that if any breach of the barrier is made by migrants, it won't hesitate to take severe measures, even going so far as to execute them on the spot. Still, despite Poland's desire to protect itself, we cannot ignore the impact these measures have on migrants. Poland's actions in handling illegal immigration have sparked debates within the EU, with member countries questioning the fairness and humanity of the approach. Let's not forget that the EU itself is grappling with immigration issues, and believe it or not, the involved member countries have not exactly been successful in handling them. In fact, Europe isn't the only continent facing these challenges. Some Asian countries, such as Thailand and Malaysia, as well as African countries like Libya and Morocco, are also struggling with immigration problems. It has indeed become an international issue. Yet again, we must ask the big question: is Poland right in its strict anti-migrant measures, or are these measures excessively racist? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an update. Make sure to also turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more exciting videos coming your way.